So today I want to show you how I tie my bead bracelets using elasticated thread. Now, first of all, I lay out my beads either by using a measuring board like this. I want to make a 7.5-inch bracelet. It goes up to about, if you look at it like this, about 8, but by the time you thread it and measure it again, it will probably be a 7.5, or you might need to adjust it a little bit. Anyway, I've laid out the beads. You don't have to use a bead board. You can use your ordinary table and measure, or you can thread and then measure it. But remember, if you're having a pattern, it's always better to lay out your beads. Then I've got my elasticated thread. I like using this one. It's strong and stretchy, and I can double it or triple it as I like. So today I'm going to double it. And then I've got my hypo cement, which I sometimes use just a little dab on the knot if I just want it to be secure. And then if you don't have a beading needle, which sometimes I don't bother to use, I just use the fishing wire and use it to thread the elasticated wire through the beads. So let's thread the bracelet first, and then we get to tying it. So if you're making a 7 or 7.5-inch bracelets, you won't cut the elastic or the stretchy material to exactly 7 or 7.5. You make it quite longer. Some people like to work with long threads. Some people like to add maybe a few inches. I like to work with long threads, or mostly I like to work with long threads. It's quite cheap, so it's not that it's just a waste. And sometimes I might adjust it and cut off the rest and use later. Now, once you've cut your thread, I suggest you stretch it a little bit. Just stretch it a little bit, because we wouldn't want it to be too loose after threading. So always try to stretch your stretchy material just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. So we've done that, and let's get on to threading. So we've done the threading, and if you notice, at the end of my elasticated thread, I tied a knot, and this is just because I don't want the beads to fall off. You can use a bead stopper, and that's a small wire coil where you put your thread in it and it will stop the beads from falling off, or you could just tie it, because we're going to cut the excess off anyway. So I've done that, and I've pulled my beads together to put back on the bead board and see what the measurement is like. Now this gives me about 7.75 or 7.5. Now if your measurement is 7 and whatever measurement it is, you don't want to tie it too tight, because you know you're going to stretch it over your hand. So you don't want it to be too tight, whereby the elasticated thread will quickly slack. So just enough such that when you roll it onto your hand, it passes the wide part of your hand. You know that elasticated bracelets is always better to roll than to stretch it always. So roll it over your hand, and as long as it passes the wide part of your hand easily, then you are fine. So we've done the threading, and now we need to tie it. So what I do to tie, after I've pulled the thread, that is like stretching it a little bit, pull the ends together and just watch how I tie. Now I always use left over right, and then right over left, and then I tie one more, which is left over right again. So this is what I'm going to do now. Now there are if you go onto YouTube, there are various ways of finishing elasticated bracelets, but I suggest that you try them and see what works for you, because quite a lot of them, if you just tie and leave, it will come undone after some time. So you need it to be strong, but you don't want it to be too thick or too big, otherwise it will be too obvious. So let's try this. Left over. So when you want to thread your beads, you can tie your elasticated thread at the end so that the beads don't fall off, or you can use a bead stopper. The bead stoppers are like a coil, and you put your thread in between the coils so that it will stop the beads from coming off. But you don't have to. You can use anything that will help you stop the beads from coming off. Once you've threaded it, just stretch a little bit, not too much. Push your beads together, and then get ready to tie. Now in tying, I use left over right, bring it through, and then I will do right over left. Sorry, take that again. Left over right, tie pull it a little bit tight, and then take the right thread, put it over the left, and bring it through, and then you pull. Make sure you pull it tight, not too tight. And then I just do one more that is left over right to make sure that it's secure. So that's my knot. Now if you go onto YouTube, there are different ways of tying your bracelets, but I feel you should try them out and choose whatever you want, or develop your own method. There's no hard and fast rule. The rule is that you tie it such that it doesn't come undone, and you tie it such that the knot is not too big, not too fat, because if it's too big or fat, it will be conspicuous. So that's the word. Now sometimes after tying, you can add a dab of hypo glue, which I do. Just a tiny dab. It's just to make sure that your knot is secure. So I just add a tiny bit onto the knot, just to make sure that it doesn't come undone, and then I leave it for a while so that the dab of glue dries up. Don't cut the thread until you're sure that the glue is dry. Otherwise, if it does come undone, it will be too short for you to tie it again. Now if you notice, I have a small gold bead in my bracelet. This is the one I was threading. I've tied it, I've added a little glue. You can see that there is a small gold bead there. Now I will tell you why I put that gold bead. Now sometimes when you are threading your beads, the holes of your beads might become quite small. So when you tie your elasticated thread, they won't fit into the holes of the beads, because once you tie your bracelet, you need to move it a little bit so that the knot goes into the hole of the bead, so that it's not too obvious. Sometimes the holes of your beads are too small, so you can use something probably that I call just like a stopper to hide the knot. Now you want to use something that will not disturb or will not be out of the design of your bracelet. So if you look at this bracelet, I use gold hearts in between the bracelet. Therefore I used a gold bead here just to hide the knot. You can see that the hole of the gold bead is quite big, so I knew it will cover the knot, and that is why I used this. You can be adventurous and try different things. to cover your knots if it will not fit into the holes of your beads. You can think of different things to use. There's no hard and fast rule that this is what a bracelet should look like. It's all creative, so you need to be creative with what you have. So once it is dry, I'll give it about an hour or 2 hours. Once it's dry, I'll pull it and then cut off these threads, and there you have your bracelet. So that is how I tie my own bracelets: left over right, right over left, and then one more left over right, and I add a dab of glue, and that's secure. That is one way of doing it. In the next video, where I'm going to show you another way of making your bracelet, but not with stretchy thread this time, but with beading wire. So on to the next video. Thank you for watching, and always remember to subscribe to our channel, and ask your friends also to subscribe to our channel to get the latest videos on our beading techniques. Thank you, and bye bye.